Excellent. Thanks, Jake. So I will, as Jacob mentioned, I'll take us now through an overview of our planning and budgeting process. As many of you are aware, we've transitioned into our second year of the planning and budget transformation process, and progress that our teams have made has been excellent. The process is by no means perfect, and we'll continue to see improvements every year, but we're really proud of the level of planning that's gone into preparing our budgets for our upcoming year. I'm going to take us through the diagram here, starting with the innermost sections, which is the work that's carried out by our directors and council, and working my way to the outer sections, which highlights all of the opportunities where the community is engaged in the process. So firstly, we start with our strategic plan. Currently, we have a strategic plan that was approved in February of 2020 and goes through to from 2020 to 2023. Every year, our annual budgeting process really begins with this strategic plan. Our senior leadership team of directors, managing directors, and council will work together to review our strategic plan and strategic vision, which will form the basis for conversations to be had regarding our operational planning. Essentially, what we're doing at this stage is understanding where we're at with our strategic plan and what steps should be taken next to enable us to continue working towards achieving our strategic visions. Next in the process is our operational planning, which is typically happening in late summer, early fall. This step takes place and is where we all work together to better understand what we need to do to achieve progress towards our strategic plan, how we can work together to better achieve outcomes, what's actually possible within the next 12 months, and what are the critical gaps in people, processes, and technologies. And then we'll come up with an operational plan. Following the operational plan comes our mandate letters. This is where our council will be developing mandate letters to be provided to our managing directors, myself and Franz Shinabiri. This is a process that enables council to outline near-term areas where council would like to see operations focus on and to report back on. These areas will be based on the outcomes of our operational planning work. Next is the work plan development. And this is all of this work is still happening in the late summer and now into the fall season. So once our mandate letters have been provided to the managing directors, our directors start in on creating their annual work plans that will outline how each of the departments will work both independently and collaboratively with other departments towards achieving outcomes as outlined in council mandate letters. By now, you're seeing a pattern of how all of these planning exercises are designed to start from a very high level with long-term strategic planning visions at the nation level, right down to annual work plans at the department level. It's this collaborative process that enables us to make meaningful progress towards achieving the goals of the Squamish Nation. At the same time that the departments are putting together their work plans and starting to think about their annual budgets, we begin our community input and engagement phase 1. This is the educational phase of the annual membership engagement sessions that you'll recall from about 2 or 3 months ago. During the education phase, you will have seen some infographics that help to illustrate the planning and budgeting process, how the community could and would be engaged in budget development, as well as videos provided by the directors to help inform the community about their departments and respective priorities. Once our work plans have been approved, departments will develop their annual budgets and will arrive at the stage we're at today, which is phase 2 of our community input and engagement. Once phase 2 concludes, which will mean that we've had an opportunity to engage with members through workshops like today, although normally in person, and through the survey that's currently running, our finance team and finance and audit committee will ensure that membership feedback is incorporated into the budget. This is why it is so important for members to participate in the survey that's currently running. Once the managing directors, finance team, and finance and audit committee have gone through the review process, recommendations are presented to council for review and ultimately for council approval. It should be noted that directors are also included to ensure that appropriate context and details are available for council and all of our teams. After the approval of the budget, we'll be providing a summary of the results of the survey and the related impacts to our annual budget. This is our closing the loop phase, which is extremely important as membership will get to see exactly how feedback has been incorporated into the budgeting process and how it will impact future budgeting and engagement decisions. And that is our annual planning and budgeting process. Now, I know I've just gone through a great deal of detail on our process, but it's important that we are transparent with the level of collaboration, consideration, and detail that goes into ensuring that we're positioning ourselves to be able to deliver on the priorities of our community. So who's involved in the budgeting and planning processes? Just a quick diagram here on the screen, and just following on to our previous slide going through the processes, I wanted to just reiterate the key contributors to our planning and budget process. What you'll see on the screen here is a diagram deliberate in form, where we have at the base of the diagram membership. We all know that ultimately it is membership who we are accountable to. And as you move up in the diagram, you'll see at the top with our directors and finance getting involved with actually preparing the budgets at the department level. So as you go through here, you can see it's the directors and their teams working on budgets with finance assistants, ultimately going through to managing directors for overall review. And then it gets into the Finance and Audit Committee, Council Subcommittee, and ultimately through to Council. And of course, finally, everything being presented back to the community. As you can see, it's a really collective and robust process undertaken by all layers of our leadership to ensure that we're delivering on the mandates of our members. So with that, now that we've gone through our process for planning and budgeting, Jacob is going to take us through our strategic priorities for 2021 and 2022.
Thanks again, Chris. You'll see on the slide 10 strategic priorities that were identified during our operational planning sessions. This is by no means an exhaustive list of all initiatives that will be undertaken in the next 12 months. Rather, it is a list of key strategic priorities that must be actioned in some way over the course of the next year in order to enable us to continue to make progress towards our overall strategic plan. What you're seeing here are mainly significant undertakings that will form the basis for future annual plans, take key steps towards long-term strategies, and to position our teams to provide outstanding programs and services for our members. So briefly touch on each of the strategic priorities on the page. Develop a staff performance management framework. This will see our HR team working collaboratively with our directors and council subcommittee to create a system that provides timely feedback and support that drives performance and development of our people. Co-create a comprehensive community plan. Led by our Planning and Capital Projects Department, this is expected to be a highly collaborative, membership-driven, multi-year project to connect our people with the land values, culture, and traditions that will guide us into the future. In the next year, we will see significant steps taken in forming the approach and starting on collaboration with the community to start developing the plan. Developing a housing strategy. We're all aware of the housing crisis our people have faced and continue to face. This project will help us to better understand the scope of opportunities, the needs, and the housing options for all members. This will be a comprehensive strategy that will unfold over a generation, which we define as roughly 25 years, as we work towards our strategic vision of every Squamish is housed. Establish a constitution. We'll be taking steps towards enabling the Squamish Nation to develop its own constitution. This is extremely important as we assert our rights as a government to establish the rules and structure of the Squamish Nation and our government. Among other things, our constitution would establish our lawmaking system, which would be approved by our people. Document our heritage. This is an extremely important initiative as we look back so we can move forward. Learning from our history, culture, and traditions, we look to increase language speakers, the use of traditional practices, and connection to our history. Although much of this work is being led by our Language and Cultural Affairs Department, it is work that is intended to form the basis for our approach to all of our programs and services. Establish service standards and policies. As we strive for continuous improvement and service excellence for all of our members, we'll be working collaboratively across departments to establish service standards that will uphold high quality service for all members supported through policy. Establish community agreements and bylaws. Recognizing a gap in our ability to ensure accountability, the managing directors are overseeing a project that will see collaboration with membership, council, and experts to determine how we can create a system of accountability and reliability for a safe and harmonious community while respecting and incorporating our Squamish Nation values and traditions. Develop a risk management framework. We are actively working on establishing a risk management framework designed to help us understand and mitigate risks that we face as we try to meet our objectives. Working closely with our departments, senior leaders, and council, we will establish a framework that enables better decision-making and outcomes. Develop a land use plan. Tied closely with the comprehensive community plan and led by our Planning and Capital Projects Department, this will involve engaging with membership to establish a vision for lands and to improve decision-making on the use of our lands. Prepare a resource assessment report. Led through the Managing Director's Office, this will be a process undertaken to assess the resource capabilities and requirements to achieve progress on strategic priorities. And I'll hand it back to Chris for our key initiatives.
Fantastic. Thank you, Jacob. On to our additional key initiatives for 2021, 2022. As mentioned in the previous slide, the previous slides that Jacob went through covered a list of some of the most significant strategic priorities to be actioned over the course of the next year, with our current slides highlighting some additional key initiatives that will also be undertaken over the next 12 months. Again, this list is not designed to be exhaustive, but to provide further insight into what our teams will be working on over the coming year. There's a lot of exciting work going on across our departments, and I'll start with education jurisdiction. So education jurisdiction refers to a project primarily undertaken by our education, employment, and training team, which is designed to better understand what is possible for the nation in terms of taking back jurisdiction of education for our people. For example, this might mean that we enter into First Nation education jurisdiction agreements instead of being under education sections of the Indian Act. We'll be looking into why this may be a good thing for the nation or why not, and ultimately determining whether the nation will pursue education jurisdiction. Additions to reserve projects. Through our Membership Services Department, the nation continues in our pursuit of reclaiming lands in our traditional territories. There are a number of parcels of land that the nation has acquired and is currently in the process of having these lands added to reserve or having reserves created. This project is ongoing and will likely continue to be a priority for years to come as the nation reclaims the lands of our people. Capacity in rights and title. Dovetailing nicely from the additions to reserve work is the amazing work that our Rights and Title Department is pursuing. Whether that be in the form of enhancing our archaeological capacity, our ability to engage in more culturally specific initiatives with outside organizations, our Rights and Title Department is quickly growing and quickly realizing that they need to enhance their capacity to ensure that we're positioned to assert our influence in matters of our inherent and Squamish Nation rights and title. Jurisdictional rights over legislation for children's services. For too long, Indigenous children have been overrepresented in care, underfunded, and poorly served by Canada's Child and Family Services regime. This regime, among other things, has failed to recognize the diverse cultures and traditions of Indigenous communities and has contributed to Canada's legacy of colonialism and assimilation. Our teams at IS Mullen will be looking at establishing laws governing how we work with our children. Squamish Valley operational effectiveness. The Squamish Valley operations team will be working closely with managing directors, and Squamish Valley members to assess, understand, and address the unique needs of the community. We know that there are areas that we can improve on, and we intend on taking the necessary steps to ensure that all of our members, but specifically in this case, our Squamish Valley members, receive equitable and appropriate programs and services. Investment in systems. The nation is making a number of key investments into our information technology systems over the next year and into the future, so that we can provide enhanced services to our members. Whether this be in the form of more intuitive and interactive platforms to collaborate between membership, council, and our administrative teams, or improving security and efficiency of our computer and network systems, or improving the capabilities of our departments to get better information for better decision making. Investments into our systems is going to play a very important role in the improvement of the way that we serve our members. And finally, data analytics and service equity. The nation will be working hard to better understand the opportunities for enhanced equity between our members living in and away from our North Shore and Squamish Valley communities. We will be working with our teams to ensure that we gather the information necessary to evaluate the effectiveness of our programming to serve all of our members. And that wraps up the formal presentation component of today's webinar. In just a few moments, I'm going to ask our guest panelists to introduce themselves before we pass it over to our moderator, Dennis Murphy, who is watching for your questions and will be teeing them up as necessary for our panelists. Just quickly before I ask our panelists to introduce themselves, I wanted to remind you that if we're unable to address any question today that's put forward, we will put that in the virtual parking lot, as we call it, and address that in a question and answer document provided to members in the course of the next week or two. So with that, I'm going to stop sharing my screen. You can see all of our panelists that are with us today, and I will ask them to provide a quick introduction, and I will do it one by one in no particular order, just in the order in which they appear on my screen. So first I will go to Mr. Tom Butler.
My name is Tom Butler. I'm the Director of Business Revenue and Services.
Thank you, Tom. And Peter Baker.
Good afternoon, everybody. Real pleasure to be here. Thanks for creating this opportunity today. Looking forward to answering any questions. And once again, Peter Baker, Director of Rights and Title for Squamish Nation. Thank you.
Thank you, Peter. And Gina Johnson Hall.
Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you, Chris. I am Gina Johnson Hall. I'm the Director of Chen Chen Story HR. Thank you.
Thank you, Gina. And Monica Jacobs.
Hey, everybody. I'm Monica Jacobs, and I'm the Director of Member Services. Happy to be here and see everybody. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. And Kelly McReynolds.
Good afternoon, everyone. Kelly McReynolds, and I'm the Director of IS Mama and Child and Family Services. Look forward to speaking with you all.
Thank you, Kelly. Brian Baker.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Brian Baker. I'm the Director of Community Operations in North Vancouver.
Excellent. Thank you, Brian. Bob Sokol.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Bob Sokol. I'm the Director of Planning and Capital Projects, and happy to answer any questions you might have this afternoon.
Thank you, Bob. Paul Wick.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paul Wick. I'm the Director of Education, Employment, and Training. And I'm happy to be here this afternoon and answer any questions that you may have.
Great. Thank you, Paul. And Arthur McCopical.
Good afternoon, everyone. I'm the Program Manager with the Rights and Title team. Happy to answer any questions. Thanks.
Thank you, Arthur. And Samaya Jardy.
Hello, I'm Samaya Jarday, and I'm the director of Tanawa Insech Natan Tusnawaya, our Language and Cultural Affairs Department.
Fantastic. Thank you, Samaya. I am now going to pass it over to Dennis Murphy, our moderator for this afternoon's Q&A period. Dennis.
Thanks, Chris. Just a reminder to all the attendees that if you do wish to ask a question, just type it in the questions and answer section, and I will have visibility and pass them over to our panel here. So the first question that we've had come up, maybe I can start with Chris on this, and perhaps kind of move across to some of the other panelists to deal with some of the other elements of the question. Is there any budget for people to heal with trauma? Really, we're thinking about here kind of people's capacity to heal, with relation to one another, and how they can support others, in particular as a direct result of intergenerational trauma. And then the second part of the comment here, I'll cycle back as a separate question.
Thanks, Dennis. So I was just going to jot that down. I thought you might move to this to part two of the question, but that's fine. I unfortunately I can't speak directly to the programming that's available to address trauma. This would be with our director of health, Glenda Gibbon, who is actively working on the vaccination rollout as we speak. So is unable to be here with us today. I would love to put the question out to our panelists here. If there's anybody who might want to provide a bit of insight into some of the programs that their departments might be offering to assist with healing in our community. I'm not going to point any fingers, so I'm not going to put anybody on the spot, but if there is anybody who does want to jump in, that would be fantastic. Otherwise, we are more than happy to provide a more fulsome response in a follow-up Q&A document. Is there anybody who wants to chime in? Kelly, I see you've raised your hand. Thank you so much.
Yes, this is a very important piece to address, and I think within, certainly through East Way Health Services and working with IS Mullen and looking at ways for healing and wellness, both one-to-one specifically for the individual or the child or the family. And absolutely, I mean, typically we haven't had a whole lot of additional funding over the last several years for this. Coming into the new fiscal year, we do have access to some federal money around preventions, and we have dedicated this to what I'm calling kind of like a family violence program, but also how we incorporate traditional healing and wellness in that for individual, family, and child therapy. I think it's, just the beginning stages of it. We're really trying to be very mindful to build a solid framework, engage with the community to see, what's needed. Because I think we can start with things around community engagement, community awareness, but we know there's so much more than that. It's moving on to perhaps sort of group work, group therapy, and most importantly, what I believe is just really the healings that we get as Indigenous people by connecting to the lands and our culture and who we are as Squamish people. So, I mean, the vision that I have within that, and certainly speaking to our finance people, is saying we need to dream bigger and we need to look at this big vision of how we can, have our places of healing to be able to, it's not just always sort of counseling or talk therapy that's needed. It's being able to get regrounded into who we are as Squamish people, to be connected to each other, to be connected to the lands, to be able to to be who we are and practice who we are. And that's where true healing is going to be. I can see, Chris, in your background, you know, with the forest. I mean, there's the beauty in being out on our lands and being in the cedars and in just being one and connected to all of that. And so I think that's, I'm not sure if I really answered the question. I mean, I'm thinking, you know, sort of a little essence-y and vision-y around that, but that's what we're looking at, a very, very structured ways that we can access the funding and have dedicated funding to be able to respond to some of the traumas and intergenerational traumas in true healing ways as Squamish people.
It's a great answer, and I know that Paul, you wanted to speak a little bit about this particular topic as well.
Yeah, thank you, Dennis. So along with building on what Kelly said about integrating supports into the programs, when we offer our programs in education, employment, and training, we do provide wraparound services to support people as they go through that. Learning can be a difficult time. There's it's just a change. In a good learning environment, you're challenged so that you grow, and that can be difficult sometimes. And what we aim to do as a department is to provide services to support people as they go through that growth. So while we're not directly involved in sort of the larger picture of counseling and support that way, along with the other programs down here, we like to call the compound. So along with IS Mullen and Used Away Health Services and membership services and education, employment, and training, we always try to integrate parts of wrapping people in a blanket and practicing that teaching about SEMQUO and helping people in our own way heal and move on with the direction they want to go in. So just a short answer, but hopefully helpful.
Short but important. And on another important topic that continues on from that initial question, the participant was showing kind of some support around affordable housing and stable housing for members. Bob, I know that's something that's obviously kind of close to your heart. You know, it'd be great to kind of, if you can take us through a little bit of what we're doing in that space.
I think certainly there are several different initiatives that the nation is undertaking to address the affordable housing issue for members. In particular, I mean, as was mentioned earlier, one of the big initiatives from council is the development of a housing strategy and refinement of a housing strategy for the nation. It comes to a surprise to no one that, you know, housing has been identified as like the key issue for Squamish Nation members probably for decades. And the nation has had several programs to address this issue. One is its program of allocating lots for single detached homes for members. That program is continued and the nation builds single detached homes, but specifically targeted for affordable housing. This year, we have under construction, it's a duplex and a fourplex on the Mullen Reserve. Those are actually going to be completed. The duplex is going to be completed and ready for occupancy in April. The fourplex is going to be ready for occupancy probably sometime in May, but those are 6 units of housing that will be affordable rental for Squamish Nation members. Those will be available, as I said, in the next few months. And then a third piece that the nation has been working on, council created and set up the Kiam Housing Society. They've been allocated 6 pieces of land on Squamish Nation reserves. And they were successful in their first grant application, and the Mullen housing project is going to be taking shape over the next few months, and that will be 95 units of intergenerational mixed income housing. Rents will be based upon income. The plan is that those housing units will be available within about a year and a half. So work is starting on those within the next few months. So there are a number of initiatives going on, and as we build and refine our housing strategy, there will be more opportunities.
Sorry, I just get myself off mute there. Super. So the next question here we have is on another really important topic within the nation. We've had some really great questions here that kind of get some crucial challenges that the nation is facing. Kelly, perhaps you could talk us through a little bit what we're doing in the space of trying to address some of the challenges with domestic violence within the nation. I know that's something that we're obviously always looking to tackle, and it'd be great to kind of see what we're doing in terms of what we're offering to victims of domestic violence.
Yeah, as I was saying earlier, it's, we are still sort of at the beginning of stages and trying to really create the foundational and framework. And sometimes it's like we can't act fast enough to address some of the things that are happening. But really, when we look at some of the desired outcomes, we're looking at, what are the true kind of response and support plans around domestic violence, looking to some of the root causes, intergenerational impacts, creating some good community-led solutions that are rooted kind of in decolonization and the Squamish ways of knowing. But I think in terms of one of the questions is around, is there prevention? Is there other kind of ways to better address? And really, it's like, how do we enhance the safety for people within the community? So I think that's absolutely going to be a great discussion to establishing a great discussion with community to establish these, like, what are the things that are going to enhance our safety? Not only how do we protect ourselves, how do we protect our children, how do we protect our loved ones and each other, but also are there safe places to go to, emergency housing, safe house, so people can continue to feel safe and protected and not feel that they have to stay within unsafe situations, and they have places to turn to and options. So I think there's a lot that we're going to have to create within that, with the programs, but also a lot of these kind of more structured places around transition or safe housing. So yeah, lots of development and designing that needs to be done. Yeah, I think the question was around something more in self-defense for women and children.
Yeah, and I'm conscious that there's a lot that we could be doing to kind of help some of these issues, and there are a myriad causes for these problems. So I think the response was great in that space. Okay. I'm just going to pass over to Jake now to kind of lead the conversation forward a little bit on some of the issues that you're seeing.
Thanks, Dennis. All great questions so far. I think sometimes it triggers a question when you see or hear somebody else's question. So hopefully it's getting the creative juices going for our attendees. I have an offline question, and we had this question last webinar as well. And it has to do with one of the key initiatives that Chris mentioned. So the on-reserve and off-reserve funding. So one of the key initiatives that Chris mentioned, and then I'll just go into a little bit, is the data analytics and service equity. And we get this a lot from members, especially our off-reserve members, about the benefits received for on-reserve members versus off-reserve members. And I know, like, internally we try not to use the on or the versus word, but in comparison right now, and just using it for that sake, it's important, I think, that is communicated. A lot of the dollars that we receive, external funding, are restricted dollars for on-reserve. And that's pretty much across all departments, and most grants we receive are for on-reserve funding. So I think with this term of council, at least, and with our directors and them being aware, we're really trying to create that balance of making sure that the external dollars that we receive for certain programs or certain benefits, that we're starting to look at them in a parallel way, so that we are matching the dollars with our off-reserve members. Albeit this is, something that's in progress, and that's the purpose of the key initiative for the data analytics and service equity. Over this next budgeting season and through this next fiscal year, we'll be collecting that data to better allow us to determine where the allocation of funds are going and what demographics, so that we can see exactly where each dollar is going. And the purpose of that will allow us to better serve our community and to better serve you. And it's a very positive direction we're going. We understand you know, the concerns, the discussion, the comments around it. And it does take some time to collect that information. And we really do appreciate the questions that come in regarding this. And I think, and I'll put this out there to our directors, when you're having these conversations, to ask these questions, you know, to see what's available, to reach out. We're trying to be more communicative in regards to what we post, what information we share, and how we reach out to our community members. So I just wanted to touch on that a little bit, and I open it up to the panelists if they want to add anything in regards to the on-reserve, off-reserve benefits. And I'll leave it at that for now. Thank you.
Yeah, and on that note, then I'll obviously pass over to Bob to add to what you just said. Jake.
Yes, thank you. One of the key components of our comprehensive community plan work that we're going to be undertaking this year and next year is we're hoping to complete a Squamish Nation census. This will be a Squamish Nation organized and completed census. It will be done by Squamish Nation members and Squamish Nation staff. And one of the things we hope to do is get a much better sense of both on-reserve and off-reserve members, who they are, what are their needs, how do they want to use Nation services. And that, I think, will also help us get a lot further in addressing some of the issues that Jacob was just mentioning.
Great. So unless any other panelists wanted to kind of jump in on that one, I'll move on to another good question. Oh, Monica.
I'd like to say more so this term of council, we've noticed that there's been more of a push to be more inclusive. And I think that although we have COVID, this type of, you know, webinar where everybody can participate, you know, opens the door. The people voted in 2018 for a new type of election law where they're asking that, you know, the people off reserve, they need to be represented at the table. And so that, you know, that was one of the things that is a major change to our election law, where now that, you know, the people off reserve can participate in who's going to choose our leaders. And I think that we're slowly moving over. We take a little bit of time, but, you know, for the people that live off reserve, you are on our radar, you know, more and more. I've never before in my 30 years of working for the nation that I've been going to council and say, I need money for off-reserve our off-reserve people, our elders, everybody that's been asking. We're now helping people, you know, in the United States. They've come, they ask us for help with rent relief, trying to put a little food on their table. You know, these are things that we're moving forward with, you know, and it's not money we can get from ISK or any external, because it's correct. A lot of this is coming, they're focusing on our on-reserve people. It's the money that we get from council, from our own source revenues that has been able to provide the needs for our people off reserve. We're doing our best, and we are still moving forward. Data collection is probably the best, considering that about 55% of our membership is living on reserve. You know, and our off-reserve population, our highest population is our children that are living off reserve. So yes, you know, this is what we want to be able to do. And having these types of meetings, let us know we're moving in the right direction. And that's what we really want. We want the feedback. We want participation, you know, and, you know, our last election, it was all, you knocked on the door on reserve and people voted for whoever. This time around, we're going to be everybody, even in other countries, you know, because we've got some people in Germany and New Zealand will be able to participate in choosing our leaders this time around. I'm really excited about that because there's been this shift. We're moving slowly, but we are moving in that direction. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica. Some great comments and obviously some great action. Paul, I know that you wanted to kind of get involved with this discussion. Over to you.
So echoing what Monica and Kale had said about a lot of our funding is targeted to on-reserve people, but also sometimes there are programs that deliver to off-reserve members. And I think the example is one in Talton-Awas is the IA program. So if you're a member and you live off-reserve, you get the same service. It's just a different delivery model. So sometimes it may look like there's not service provided to members off reserve. It's just delivered differently or through a different organization other than the nation. And we need to recognize that sometimes. But I think the most important takeaway is that, as Monica had said, that it's definitely the direction guided by the work of the committees for election reform and increasing the understanding. It used to be the only other thing you had to consider was, what are we doing in the Squamish Valley? Well, now it's, what are we doing in the Squamish Valley? What are we doing off reserve? So it's definitely broadened, and that comes from the direction that's coming through senior leadership, whether that be elected officials or the managing director and director team. So it's definitely changing. I know it can never be as fast as needed or wanted, but really just echoing what Monica said, if you do have a question and you do live off reserve, please don't hesitate to reach out and ask us to see what you qualify for, or if we can connect you with an off reserve agency so that you can get a similar or the same service. Thanks.
Thanks, Paul. Now changing tack somewhat, but again focusing on our. Oh, sorry, apologies, Jacob. Let me pass over to you first before we move on from this topic.
Thanks, Dennis. Just quickly, I think just for the sake of the attendees and the recording, I just wanted to reach out to Monica. Just if you can give a rough stat of the percentage of members living on reserve and off reserve. Just a rough estimate. Does not be exact.
Yeah, okay. So we have just a little under 4,100 band members, and about 55% live on reserve. And so that's just a little over 2,100 band members that live on reserve. And that's because we've been, you know, we've got those units up in the Squamish Valley. We've got a lot of family sofa surfing with each other. We know this is going to increase because we got HIM housing, and we've got those 94 units coming up. You know, the 6 units that Bob's talking about, we went to CMHC for those dollars, and you know, we hadn't gone to CMHC for such a long time that it was so easy to get those dollars and to be able to provide these 6 units. And they came back to us and said, do you want another 6? Like, it was like, that's kind of what has been going on. So, you know, I know that we've been talking about bringing our people home. That's the whole intent of all of this. And so that, you know, what we want to be able to say is that 75% of our membership is home. You know, that's where we're hoping to be, you know, where we have not 55%, but 75% of our people home. You know, we know that there are some people just won't be able to for whatever reasons, or they choose not to. And those are the people we still need to help as well. They need to reach out to us and let us know what kind of help they need. And Paul's right. It might look a little different from what we do on reserve, but we can help people, you know. So I don't know if I answered that well enough for you. 993 of those 4,100 people are children under the age of 18. And of those, 47% live on reserves, which tells me that more and more as our families are starting to have families, or young people starting to have families, there's nothing for them on reserve unless they want to live in someone's basement. And so they're living off reserve and they're paying rent. And that's why we're thinking that with some of these other units that they would be fine with paying rent because they won't have to pay $2,200 a month. Maybe they're only paying $1,400 or $1,300 a month, you know, and raising the children on reserve. Because for some of us who's lived on reserve all our lives, we know what that's like. It's okay for your child to run down the street and play down there because you know your aunt or uncle are down there. You know, we just want to have more children on our reserves because the way the housing policy is set up, it's our older people that are getting these homes. The ones who've been on the housing list for like 30 years are now getting homes, and that system isn't working. And so this is why, you know, Bob and I have been tasked with coming back, you know, to the people and talking about, you know, amending the housing policy so that we can bring as many people home as we can. Thank you.
Thanks, Monica, and thanks for the obvious passion there on this particular topic. Just now going back to the questions that we were going to look to address, and there's been some really great questions coming in, so please do keep them coming in, and some great comments as well. One of the earlier questions that was flagged up by one of the participants was really around kind of what's our approach when we're looking at kind of hiring members and kind of the communication, I suppose, and reaching out to members in that regard. You know, and how can we kind of facilitate that work in members who are employed with the nation? So maybe Gina, if you can talk a little bit about the work that we're doing in that space, and perhaps our approach and any kind of the statistics that we've got.
All right, hopefully I'm unmuted. Thank you, Dennis. So, yeah, great question. And currently our HR team in discussion with our committee, our council committee, and the managing directors is how can we approach how we interact and engage with our members, specifically those that are interested in working for our nation. So it's actually a focused part of our work plan for the next year around how can we not only increase the communication with our member applicants, but also make it meaningful and engaging. We're actually also going to be partnering with the Education, Employment, and Training team to assist our members that are interested in working here in looking at career options, positions that they've applied for specifically, and if there's any gaps, how can the Education, Employment, and Training team help them work collaboratively with HR to address those gaps, as well as for a statistic, for example, our talent manager just shared with me the other day. Currently, our member employees sit about 2/3, it's about 63% of our hirings in the last year. So since we've been taking stats, probably the last 6 or 7 years, it's fluctuated between just under 60 to just about 70%. So it's still in about that 10% range, between 60 and 70%. So good question. And I do encourage any members that have questions about process, hiring, getting hired at Squamish Nation to please email myself or Rahima, and I think we can put that in the Q&A and the follow-up document as well. So great question, and Chris has his hands up. He probably wants to add to the answer.
Yeah. Because we're talking about education, and I'm gonna push Chris down the queue and let Paul have a few words on the education side. I know that within the finance department we're looking at getting more nation members in working in coordination with Paul's team. So I already know there's some great work in there, but I'll leave it to him to kind of talk a little bit more about what he and his team are doing.
Thank you, Dennis. So in addition to the work we're doing with Chen Sui, we're also working with the ECDEV arm of the nation, NCHI. So obviously, as that organization grows and expands, they're going to have need for employees as well, and also are generating employment opportunities through the nation. So what we need to do as a department is we really need to work with membership and work together to find out what skills people have, what skills people need to get to the opportunities they have, and to show the people what opportunities are being generated for them. So we do have some work we need to do in this area, but we do need your help to do that. So when you see flyers go out asking you about information about what your interests are, what kind of assistance you need, what kind of help you like, what kind of programs you're interested in seeing the department offer, we really need your help in getting a reply to that. And that helps us have a strong footing to go to leadership and say, this is what membership's telling us they want. This is what they're telling us that they need to take advantage of these opportunities, not only within the nation, but being generated outside the nation as well. And as a team, a director team, we're definitely working and outlining what those opportunities are, and so that we can build and put people in the right, and put them in the position to have to connect with the opportunity. So I just wanted to add that. Thank you.
No, absolutely, and I'd want to echo those comments. If anyone's interested in finance, then let them come to me or to Paul. We'll find a place for you. So on that note, I'll pass it over to Chris, and then Jake, I know, has got some comments he wants to make on this space as well.
Great, thanks, Dennis. Yeah, I just wanted to build on some of the comments that Gina was making, and thinking more about development of members already working for the community, and into the future when members join the administrative team. We are looking at short-term and long-term plans to provide opportunities for our members to see some vertical growth through the organization. And Gina and her team this year have a project on succession planning that they'll be undertaking, which will be a collaborative effort working with our directors and starting to think about how we can start flagging opportunities that are coming up, and making sure that we're positioning members to be able to whether it's get the training or get the opportunities that they need to demonstrate the abilities to move into these roles. So we're really excited about that work in the short term. We'll talk more about the long-term plan at a later date, but that's some of the exciting work that's going to be happening over the next 12 months. Thank you.
And Jake, so over to you.
Thanks, Dennis. Great question. I want to address, I think, one really important piece in this question, and it was the balance of women and members, the gender equity piece. And I really like the responses and answers from the directors so far. I think coming into this term as leadership and from a council level, this is something that was addressed right away. I think, the gender equity role and making sure that there's a balance, not just at the table, but also across the organization. As I mentioned, I think in my introduction, I also sit on the HR committee, and I know from a strategic discussions that we have at this committee, we make sure that we have, we include this piece, and then we include this piece when we're talking about policies and implementation. And it is a very, very important piece. And I didn't want to let it go by, because we are a community that stems from matriarchs. And I know, our women are the backbone of our community. And, it's only a matter of time that our women are going to, hopefully outnumber our men across the organization and bring the strengths and gifts that they have to the change that we want to make, I guess, in our community. So I really appreciate that comment, and it is looked at from a strategic point or strategic vision, and that's across, I think, all departments as we look at roles and members and creating opportunities. So I just wanted to touch on that. Thank you for your time.
Thank you very much, and obviously that's a really important kind of aspect of this whole conversation about members and getting people involved and engaged. And on the topic of engagement with members, there was a question here around our website and the information that we put on there. So perhaps I could pass over to Laura Abbott, our comms manager, to talk a little bit about kind of the information that's available on the services that the nation provides on the website, perhaps what we're looking to do and what we're looking to do perhaps in spaces of kind of forms and information for members on that.
Sure. So hi, everyone. I'm Laura Abbott. I'm the new manager of communications and engagement for the nation. So what I will say on the website is that it is a priority. There is a new website that is under development. We know that the current website isn't meeting member needs, particularly around things like accessing services and being a bit of a portal into all of the great work that the folks around this call do. So the new website will have the functionality to be able to access forms and be a better portal, like I said, into what the service offerings are from the various departments for members. I don't yet have a timeline on when that will be launched, but there will be communications out to membership about that before. So we'll be giving you a heads up to what the new website will be look like and how to access all the services available through it. So if you are having challenges finding information on the website now, you can always email communications@squamish.net, and we'd be happy to either help you out with the website or direct you to a department to get the information that you need. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Laura. So I'm just going to invite people again, if there are any further questions or if there are any thoughts that kind of build off the comments that the panelists have been making, please do submit them via the Q&A function here. Again, we're having some really great, insightful discussion here that, you know, we'd love to continue in the time that we have. So unless I see some kind of additional questions popping up in the Q&A, I think I'll pass it over to Chris Mullen, our MD, to perhaps take the conversation forward.
Sounds great. Thanks, Dennis, and thanks to everybody who's able to provide some questions. I think some really good questions and really great insight provided from our team here. So I'm just going to share my screen back up here. Just a few final slides to go through this afternoon. So if you'll just bear with me for a moment. Okay. I've just gotta make my way through the presentation here. Sorry, it's PowerPoint at its best. Next slide here. So other ways to participate in budget talks. So as I mentioned during the presentation today, we do have our online survey, which is still active, still up until March 7th. So please, if you can, get onto the survey and provide some feedback, and that will really help to form how we look at our budget this year, and especially as we think about engagements in the future with our members. So you can find the survey and any other links and information at squamish.net/budget talks. So updating our legal financial framework. So wanted to provide the second of two sneak peeks into next week's webinar. So we are going to be hosting, our folks from the Financial Management Board, in collaboration with our team here, is going to be hosting a presentation and Q&A period similar to today, to talk about a transition from the Squamish Nation's financial administration bylaw to a financial administration law. So we're really excited about the benefits and opportunities that transitioning from the, as we call it, the FAB, the financial administration bylaw, over to the financial administration law, and what that can mean for the community. We're excited to share some of that information with you next week on March 9th at 3 p.m. to 4:30 p.m. Where the FMB will provide a presentation, and we'll have a chance to have a Q&A session similar to this. And finally, for the prize draw. So to be entered into the prize draw for one of two $100 gift cards, please ensure you provided your name and band number for the draw. You should see a link in the Q&A provided by our moderators to a Google form where you can enter your name and contact details. We will be doing the draw for the names and the gift cards on Facebook Live, and you can catch that on Friday, the 5th of March. It's a couple of days from now at 11:30 a.m. And finally, just wanted to say in closing, we're really thankful for all of the members that were able to make it out to today's webinar and last week's webinar. Really great questions. Hopefully, we were able to provide some valuable insight to our members. And we're hopeful that any members who were unable to attend this week or last week's webinars will be able to check those out online to hear some of the great feedback and the Q&As that we've had over the past couple of sessions.
And Chris, just on the top, sorry to interject, just on the topic of Q&A, there's one final question that's come in here just quickly, but I'm conscious that we've got Samaya on here, so I should be able to address it pretty rapidly. There's a question around remote learning for Squamish language learners who currently live off reserve. You know, do we have what are we doing in that space, I suppose, is the nub of the question.
Great, thank you. Yes, we are in the planning stages. We will be offering 2 remote learning language learning sessions. We are looking at right now one during an evening during the week. We haven't, it's going to either be a Tuesday or a Thursday, and one on Saturdays, because and those dates are chosen based on what we've heard so far from some members who are either working during the week and can't make it during work hours, and some who've stated they would like to have a language session on the weekend. And those are all, they're not written in stone, they're flexible. We want to, and as time goes on, if we find other times that work better for Nation members, then we will move to that. So we're looking over the next couple of weeks to have that up. And they're not direct, and just to share with all online and for all Nation members, we also have our Teltut Nomachit sessions that are happening on Wednesday evenings from 6:30 to 8. Tonight is Ray Naturo that's speaking. It's our 3rd session. And those are all offered remotely. And even when we do our planning, at least when we do eventually go back to in-person learning, we will continue to provide remote learning opportunities as well for language and for culture that we're sharing through Teltut Nomachit. So please, so it is coming. Yes, the answer is yes. It's coming.
I'm sure that's a response that people want to hear. It's I know that Teltut program. It seems like a great program. So on that, I'll hand back over to Chris to close the session, I suppose.
Thanks, Dennis, and thanks, Samaya, for providing that response. Yeah, just in closing, just wanted to say just a few more thank yous. I did want to thank all of our panelists today for being available to share your insights with the community and supporting us and supporting all of us in our budget engagement and our budget preparation. I'm gonna quickly go through the roster here by first name only, because you did introductions early. So thank you, Bob and Peter and Gina and Arthur, Kelly and Monica, Brian, Paul and Samaya. And I think we lost Bob, had to run, but Bob Sokol as well. And finally, I did want to take this opportunity to thank the rest of the team that's helped a lot behind the scenes to make today happen and to make it possible, specifically Laura Abbott, our comms manager, Aoife Finn, as well as our advisors, Marnie Robinson and Isabel Cullither, doing a lot of great work behind the scenes to make today and last week's webinar possible. So we couldn't have done it without all of your support, and just very grateful for all the contributions to make these webinars possible. So with that, that is the end of today's webinar. I hope everyone has a safe and fantastic day, and Haichkwa.